We'll be talking with Dr. Faisal Suliman. He is the chairperson of the South African Muslim Network and is here to tell us about a very important event that is happening tomorrow evening. Pity it is so very far away. It's in KZN. I'd love to have attended this event. It is about the Ambassador Hanan Jarrar, she is being hosted by the South African Muslim Network. Assalamu alaikum to you, Dr. Faisal Suliman. Welcome to the program, and a big event that you guys are hosting tomorrow evening in Durban.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for having me. Just a small correction. The event is tonight, not tomorrow night, inshallah. And of course, it will be live streamed on Salam Media as well.
Alhamdulillah, yes, I am aware of that. Shukr. I was given to understand it's tomorrow night, but thank you for that correction. Tell us why it's important for us as a community, to be there, to hear Hanan Jarrar, and what type of things do you think is going to be coming out? We all understand what the Palestinian issue is all about, and alhamdulillah, we are all very, very the pro-Palestine cause. But the importance of being at an event like this.
Yes, I think perhaps slightly older people tend to know a bit more about what has happened in Palestine, the history you mentioned. I think many of the younger generation maybe get an inkling when there's a massive war on. Well, you can't even call it a war because it's completely two disproportionate sides. But when Israel launches this massive attack, and for that a week or two, Palestine comes in the news and a lot of our younger people. But I think generally because it's not discussed much in the mosque, it's not discussed much on big night lectures, etc., etc. There's a lot of people who actually don't know much about, the extent. I'm not again about the massive attacks that happened, the extent of daily. Yesterday a 16-year-old boy was shot dead. More Israelis, more land. They're going to take more now to give it to Ukraine and Jews. It's not reported in your mainstream media. It's So the point of tonight's hosting of the ambassador is first of all, as you say, I think it's important that the Palestinians know they haven't been forgotten. They've clearly seen their Arab neighbors desert them with all of this naderung and cooperation with Israel. Now they call it normalization. There's nothing normal about it. That's the first thing, to show support to the Palestinian people, not necessarily the PA. The PA is not without its criticism. The Palestinian Authority that rules over occupied Palestine. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to engage. Although it's International Women's Day and there's, the trade union speakers who wanted to come in and speak, etc. We've narrowed it down to a small introduction by myself, a 20-minute talk by her, and then, questions and answers. There's a WhatsApp line that people can, from all over the country, send in their questions. Those who are listening on live stream, etc. And of course, we're hoping those around the Durban area will come to the hall. But to interact with her, to find out exactly, this relationship between the PLO or the PA and Hamas, the cooperation with the Israelis, what is the latest in terms of where is this going on? While all the talk is happening, more land gets taken, more Palestinians are being evicted, young people are in hunger strike. And of course, what is clear from what is happening in Ukraine is the dichotomy, the hypocrisy, the double standards in the international community, in media coverage, in how one conflict is sanitized and the other one is all about empathy and support. So that's the point of hosting her, and for her to meet leaders of the community, to get a feel for. There will be people from the various Palestine support organizations will meet with her during and after the formal event, for her to get a feel of what South Africans think. South Africa, I think, has been an important supporter of the Palestinian cause. Historically, that seems to be moving away now, with Israel making greater inroads. I mean, we had the Israeli ambassador meet with the Tegueni municipality mayor, and talk about cooperation and water technology, etc. And it's important for the Palestinian ambassador to have this context and to go and talk to these people. And one of the ways of doing that is to have this meeting with locals, but with us here as well, and so that we can give her feedback. And more importantly, maybe she, you asked, what can we do? Maybe she should be able to then tell us what she'd like to see, what the Palestinians would like to see from South Africans and the Muslim community in particular. Yes, we all make dua, of course. We send donations for relief, but that cannot be the sum total of our participation or our amnesia in many cases.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you and your family are, have always been active in these type of causes. Alhamdulillah, may Allah accept all your efforts. You touched on Ukraine. You touched on the biased reporting of and the sanitized reporting of the international media. And having said that, we also know, and I just cringe to wonder what's going to be the fate of the Palestinian people should this come to pass. But apparently, the Israelis have invited 10,000 Jewish Ukrainians to resettle or to settle in Israel. Obviously on Palestinian land. That's going to be a very huge impact. And it seems that the playing fields are being really narrowed down as far as the Palestinian people are concerned. It just seems like the situation's getting worse rather than better.
No, you're absolutely right. And this is the tragedy of it. The support for the Palestinians in the world, although, of course, PDS is making inroads by whichever name, the whole concept in terms of getting more and more companies. The fact is, in terms of being an issue that evokes empathy and sympathy and support, it's just not there. Combination of the power of the Zionist community, their financial, strength, ability to bully, to buy off, intimidate, whether it's a Hollywood actress or actor, whether it's producers of movies, whether it's, of course, news ownership, and where they don't own, to intimidate, harass, etc. One just has to see the pressure on the SABC, for example, locally. You had the Jewish Board of Deputies sue another Muslim radio station for a case that went on over 10 years over an interview that they ran to basically make you self-center or else face lawsuits that are there to drain you financially. Even if they lose, they drain you financially. So there's a whole lot of reasons, but that shouldn't be stopping us. They doing what is in their interest. We have to do what is in our interest, what is in support of the Palestinian cause. And one of the ways is to show up with this hypocrisy. One of the ways, a tangible way, is so many Muslims advertise in so many of the local newspapers, whether it be those like the Star in Johannesburg, the Sunday Times in Durban, a whole multitude of newspapers. There's no leverage that our Muslim community is putting on those newspapers to say, we are spending so much money in your newspaper. We want to see more coverage on this issue. We want to see more balanced reporting. That is a simple example. SABC is a public broadcaster. We all pay TV licenses. It's its mandate. It's not a private radio station with its own editorial or political agenda. So Muslims should be, and Palestinian activists, Muslim or not, pro-Palestinians, should be putting a lot more pressure on the SABC, for example. Those are places we can influence. And of course, the tool is in your hand. The tool is the mobile phone, social media, Twitter, etc. The use of this, it's a matter of educating our public on becoming activists, not just worrying about the football or all the other sports or entertainment, etc. Spending a bit of time, and that's where SAMNET can help, for example. We can train, we can show you what to tweet, how to tweet, etc. And use the social media as one of the forms of pressurizing, and I don't mean, forwarding WhatsApp messages within the Muslim community. We all can, as you said, most people especially the older people, tend to know all of the stuff. We're very good at forwarding in our groups. The impact has to be with outside of our community, outside of our general WhatsApp groups. And this is where becoming a social media activist, taking the time to tweet, taking the time to educate yourself, and posting it outside, posting it, asking when you hear, when a political commentator comes on radio, on another radio station, on TV, or writes in the newspapers some hogwash, that's the time to be taking up your mobile phone, whether it's penning a letter, whether it's writing a tweet, putting pressure on them the same way the Israelis do, to be more objective, to be more fair, and to create, at the moment, you say Ukrainian, whether it's a Russian, whether it's a Ukrainian football player, tennis player, it's all about emotion and sympathy and empathy. You say Palestinian in the West, and the narrative is, a scarf-wearing terrorist, a bloodthirsty anti-Semite, because this narrative has been pushed. And yes, to some extent, some of it, obviously, Sky News, or the whole Murdoch group is not owned by us. They have a political agenda, but that doesn't stop, millions and millions of Muslims being able to challenge. Muslims being able to go to Wikipedia and make a noise on Wikipedia, make a noise on Twitter, have different Twitter trends going, posting, spending time and money promoting Palestinian culture, showing them as human beings. As long as they're not showing as human beings, it's not the blue-eyed blonde of the Ukrainians, but as human beings, there won't be no sympathy for them. And we know this from the apartheid history. As long as black people were portrayed in the Roy Safar, the Swar Safar, all of this, they weren't seen as human beings. Even local whites didn't see, to feel sympathy for a dog, but saw a black person getting shot, evoked absolutely no emotion. And the same thing with the Palestinians.
Okay, let me ask you this question. We know you must have come across these reports as well. Last week, Australia has obviously banned Hamas, touting it as a full-out terrorist organization. And I guess this is a question that one needs to put to the ambassador tonight as well. How does this then further impact on movement of Palestinians, those that are able to move about freely, those that are able to go in and out of the country? And I'm thinking in terms of Palestinian trade. We have now an ambassador here in South Africa in the form of Hanan Jarrar. Does that then indicate that, inshallah, we as the South African community can have some sort of exchange of trade, some form of trade relations? So the Hamas being obviously labeled as a terrorist group by Australia, undoubtedly the rest of the Western world is going to follow suit. And where does it leave us as South Africans regarding that issue? And then, of course, ongoing trade, exchange of trade with the Palestinian people.
Yeah, Hamas being labeled a terrorist group in Australia is not by accident. It is the work of years of lobbying the government, lobbying senators, lobbying individual politicians, supporting them financially so that they vote for something like this, combined with an agenda in the media to portray Hamas is exactly that. Notwithstanding the fact that Hamas is a legitimately elected government, free and fair elections by the people in Gaza, and yet, of course, that's declared invalid by the United States, etc. So that is exactly the result of lobbying. Make no mistake, the same lobbying is happening in South Africa, and a lot of the younger politicians are being fed and are buying the Hasbara lines. The Hasbara is, the Jewish propaganda or the Zionist propaganda, rather. And there's trade going on, increasing trade with Israel. There's exchange, cultural exchanges under the guise of cultural exchange, religious excursions. So the influence of the Israelis in present younger politicians, the ANC in particular, is growing stronger and stronger. They are lobbying all the time. Tony Leon, when he was still head of the then, I think, PFP or the DA, was very proud in announcing there was at one stage, invitation to Sheikh Yassin. People remember he was in a wheelchair and he was taken out with or a
Yeah.
rocket in his wheelchair. There was an invitation to him to come to South Africa, and Tony Leon himself made a point of scuttling that and getting people, a whole lot of noise, financial pressure from DA supporters, etc., to make sure that Hamas doesn't get a foothold or an office in South Africa or, direct diplomatic. Of course, Africa has an ambassador in Ramallah, but direct for foreign exchange offices, etc., in Gaza. So that is ongoing all over the world, as well as in South Africa. The Israelis have a double agenda. One is improve the relationships, cultural. We've seen now the Davis Cup tennis, South Africa playing Israel in Davis Cup tennis. So this is all ways of normalization. At the same time, you scuttle anything to do with Palestinians. So to the other part of your question, nothing stops us. You see, this is the point. Nothing stops South Africans from, and people may not realize we're talking about sanctions against Russia. Palestinians are choked, literally choked in Gaza, and even in places like Jerusalem, etc. South Africans remember the nominee system you have to go through here as an Indian or a black person for business. Same thing there. They can't import directly. They can't have their own bank accounts. They have to go to a third Israeli party. All sorts of obstacles, which makes their lives more difficult, more expensive, because goods cost more. You have to go to third parties, etc. And they have no access directly to imports, etc. of their own. So nothing stops South Africans. Nothing stops the Muslim community now ensuring with Ramadan you don't buy Israeli dates, you buy Palestinian olive oil, you buy Palestinian products. We have to let us find ways with the ambassador of opening more trade relations directly. Gaza, as you know, they can't, other than air, everything else is controlled by the Israelis. The ports are blocked off, the seas are totally blockaded by Israeli Navy ships. And then, of course, Egypt blocks the one border and the Israelis the other. So Gaza is totally choked off, but that shouldn't be stopping South African Muslims in particular for exploring religious, cultural. Of course, religious people go, of course, to Al-Aqsa in particular, and then visiting the other places. But you're absolutely right. We should be opening. We should be doing more to have direct trade with the Palestinians, and of course, we should be sending messages. This is the other point of social activism and using your phone. To the minister is on Twitter, Durko is on Twitter, sending strong messages to the Department of Foreign Affairs, to the presidency, of the support of the vast majority of people for the Palestinian cause and opposed to Zionism. We don't do that, you see. And so even the government sometimes, must be wondering, how do you sell them boycott Israel? How do you sell the mayor in Durban boycott Israel when he sits on the news and he sees the Israelis are sitting with the UAE leadership and talking new projects, sitting with the Saudis, Saudis buying Israeli weapons, Israeli drone and spy technology. So it needs a lot of effort on our part. And we have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what we tried. We may not succeed, but Allah is going to ask us on what we tried.
Dr. Suliman, finally, and this, you touched on it at the opening of the interview, and you said that perhaps our young people are not conscientized enough on the Palestinian issue, because one of the key issues or reasons is that this is not discussed in our mosques. Aren't we as Muslims failing our youth and future leadership by not discussing and lobbying the most essential, relevant issues of the day in our mosques? We have an opportunity every week on a Friday, and that's when we're meant to be discussing these pertinent, world-shaking events. We can't just be sitting in our mosques talking about, I guess, maybe relevant but possibly unimportant issues. This is about our futures, the future of the Muslim Ummah. It's about our children becoming true leaders in politics and in every field that they decide to go in. Why have we not made strides in this area? That is a question that begs to be answered. And with minds like yours, Dr. Faisal Suliman, and undoubtedly you belong to a group of people with such deep thinking and open minds, why is this not happening?
course, that's a 1 hour answer. But the short answer, first of all, you see, it doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be that if you're discussing matters of fiqh, for example, or religious things that you cannot discuss, politics relevant to the Muslim community, or if you're doing it the other way, that you can't discuss this. Nowhere does it say that the 30-minute Jummah lecture has to be on one subject. You can mix them. You can speak for 15 minutes on religious issues, the normal type of Jummah lectures that we have. And you can take 10 minutes or 15 minutes to discuss what is relevant. It doesn't have to be one subject for 30 minutes. And I must be honest with you, I know I'm not going to make myself popular in many circles with this, but the vast majority of our Jummah lectures, if you listen carefully, it is actually 5 minutes of content repeated 5 times. It is saying the same thing in different ways for 30 minutes. But essentially, if you narrow it down and listen carefully, to be honest, it's actually only 7 minutes. If you take out repetition, the actual content isn't more than about 7. I tend to make a mental note of this when I'm listening. That's why I say it. And I'll just tell my mind, okay, that's a repeat, So that's the one thing. So it can be done. Both. You can cover both in 30 minutes more than adequately. Secondly, the Darul Ulooms, the seminaries have always had a narrow focus, and that has been the religiosity, depending whether it's the Barelvi, Deobandi, they have their own priorities. So that is for them, they see that there's clearly there's no formal training in all of this in any of the Darul Ulooms. A lot of the alims go directly to a Darul Uloom when they're still, 13 years old, then at 6, then at 7. So no real exposure to critical reading and analysis, and therefore maybe they don't feel adequately informed to be able to deliver a talk on something like this. And, there clearly has been a very apolitical stance taken by many of the alims over the years. And that continues in many places where they feel stay out of politics, for a whole host of reasons that won't earn me any favors to discuss. But but you're absolutely right about one thing. The Jummah lecture, you have a captive audience for 20-30 minutes in front of you, captive audience at home during the lectures, many people listening while driving in their cars, ladies listening on the different platforms that are available today to listen to people in the masjid. So you have a captive audience for those 20-30 minutes once a week. And yes, you have to make it count. You have to educate, as you said, you can do both, the religious and the political or topical questions. Do people know Yemen, they're eating grass, they are starving? I don't know what answer we're going to give. It scares me to think what answer we're going to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he asks, what did we do? Not just donations. Afghanistan, Biden is stealing money from the Afghanistans to give it to the victims of 9/11 when Afghanistan had nothing to do with it. Right? Who of us has taken to tweet about this? Who of us has taken the trouble to go on social media and make a noise about it? So, it doesn't matter if they ignore you in the state. Allah's going to ask you, what did you do? Never mind you succeeded or not. What did you do?
Absolutely.
That is, I think, what we have to answer. And it's not only going to be enough to say, oh, yeah, I said Ameen when the Maulana made dua in the masjid. So I made my own dua. Not enough.
Okay.
In Yemen, the Saudis, what are we doing to telling the Saudis to stop using American weaponry to blast the Yemen into the Stone Age? Literally, the Yemen has been put into the Stone Age, etc. So there's a lot that we can do, other than what we South Africans are good at, giving donations. Alhamdulillah, long should that continue. But even that, with the economic changes, with the developments, with the looting, with the economic, even a lot of middle-class people are feeling the pinch. I mean, I can tell you our SAMNET bursaries, for example, that is why we do bursaries in media and political science. We want to encourage those fields for people to be studying, specifically only give funds for those two fields. Right? The other headway is the IMA. Yeah, we're giving health sciences bursaries, and I can tell you money is tight. We have middle-class families who previously would have afforded bursaries saying they can't come out and now applying for bursaries. So you are not always going to be able to give donations. That pipe is also going to eventually dry up. The ability to just give donations and donations. Then what are we going to do?
Right. Okay, we've come to the end of the show. Very interesting talking with you this morning. Just remind everybody about the event this evening, and then we can wrap up, inshallah.
So inshallah, 7:30, the Al Ansar Hall, 189 West Road. I'm sure everyone in Durban who's in this area knows where that Al Ansar radio station is. The hall is right next door. Of course, live streamed on Salam Media. So inshallah, that if you can't make it. But yeah, for those who are in the area and listening in Durban, we really would think it'd be important for you to come. There's a WhatsApp line I will send you, inshallah. I know we sent it to Ponti for people to ask questions on WhatsApp from all over the country, and we will post that. And we've tried to keep it, not to end too late. We know it's of course a weekday and a work day. So inshallah, 7:30 to 8:30, and then after refreshments in Isha, and then direct chat with the ambassador.
Inshallah. Shukran very much for putting this very important event together. I have no doubt in my mind it's going to be a success. And till the next time we speak again, go well, and salam alaikum to you, Dr. Faisal Suliman, Chairperson of the South African Muslim Network.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
10 after 9 o'clock exactly. News and views right here on Salam.